21st of October 1995. Ooh, I'm moving. And so on the 21st of October 1995, ooh, I lost it. Sorry, guys. Okay. And that his name was Joseph, and he basically talked. Wow. Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have a very special case for you, and I say special case because the man we're covering today is known to be one of the most notorious serial killers that we've had in South Africa, and he goes by the name of Moses Sithole, also known as the ABC Killer. Now, Moses Sithole was born on the 17th of November 1964 to parents Simon and Sophie Sithole. Now, sadly, when Moses was just a young boy, he lost his father, leaving him with his mother as well as his siblings. And so Moses' mother's basically known to be abusive, and she was an alcoholic. And because Moses' father was the breadwinner, she would then be unable to care for her and her children. And so then she decided to send them over to an orphanage. Now, when he was just 8 years old, he decided to escape from the orphanage that he was at the time. Basically in his mind, he thought when he gets back home to his mother, she'd be happy to see him. But that's actually not what happened. What happened was that she was actually infuriated that he had escaped the orphanage and that he had came back home. And because we know that she was abusive, I mean, there's no account of it, but you can basically just imagine, how it is that she had reacted to him coming back home. And so then he was sent right back to the orphanage. And when he was 11 years old, he was sent to an orphanage in KZN, which he also later escaped and came back home in Vosloorus to stay with his older brother. Now, Moses was known to be charming. He was known to be good with his words. He was good looking. And so in his early teens, he was known as a ladies' man. He was good with the ladies. However, when he was rejected by the ladies, he was known to be quick to anger and react to that. So he wasn't really used to, being rejected by females, because in his mind he was good at it and he just didn't understand why no one would want him. Now, when Moses was just 22 years old, this is when he would attack his first victim, who went by the name of Patricia Khumalo. Strangely enough, Patricia Khumalo is actually his girlfriend's sister. And so what actually happened with Patricia Khumalo was that he assaulted her and he raped her in a fault. And shortly after that, he attacked another one of his girlfriend's sister, who went by the name of Lindiwe Khumalo, who too was assaulted and raped by Moses in a fault. Now, he threatened both sisters and told them that if they had told anyone about these assaults, that there would be major consequences, and so the sisters just never came out with the cases. In 1989, he met a woman by the name of Dora, and he told Dora that he was basically a successful businessman and he promised Dora a job. And, he was kind enough to actually escort Dora to where it is that her new job would be. And obviously Dora was excited. I mean, she had just gotten a new job. However, she too had fallen victim for his tactics, and she was raped in a fault, and her hands were actually tied by her own underwear as well. And so he told her that if she too had came out with it, that there'd be major consequences. However, 3 months later, Dora bumped into Moses at a supermarket, and so she then decided to call the police to let them know that the man that had assaulted her was in the shopping center. And so then the police actually did then come to the shopping center and arrested Moses. However, they took Dora with them and put them both at the back of a police van. Like, I'm calling you guys to let you guys know that the man that raped me and assaulted me is here. Okay, cool. They pull through, but they put him and I both at the back of a police van. One of the police officers does recall, though, hearing Moses say to Dora, "Bitch, I should have killed you." Moses Sithole then spent 7 years on the rape charges, and he was released on good behavior in 1993. Now, during the time when it was that he was actually serving his sentence, he met a woman by the name of Martha, who happened to be a sister of one of the inmates that were also serving at the same time as Moses. And so after being released in 1993, he then moved in with Martha. But as you can imagine, Martha's family wasn't very fond of Moses because of his history, but I guess they were in love. And on the 5th of November 1994, Martha gave birth to a baby girl. Now, upon Moses living with Martha and her family, he decided to then join the family business, which was basically like a mechanic. He did this for some time, but after a while, he decided that it just wasn't for him. And so then he told Martha and her family that he would then go out to look for a job. And so then he would dress in a suit, he would carry a newspaper, he looked well, he was presentable, and he was basically leaving the house every single day to go and look for a job. He then met a woman by the name of Maria Manama, who he told his name was Sylvester, and he was basically a successful businessman, and, he would get her a job. He actually met her family as well, and they trusted him. Like I said, he was well-spoken. There was really no reason to believe that he was a criminal. And so then they left together as well. He was going to escort her to where it is that her job would be. But on the 16th of July 1994, she was found dead in a field, and he had engraved into her thigh, "I am not fighting with you, and soon you will understand." And so how Moses would lure in his victims is that he would promise them a job with a good pay within a good location. And because at the time in 1994, because of the South Africa and its democracy, many South Africans at the time were looking for jobs, and more South Africans were able to move within more areas in South Africa now. So it was a pretty good tactic at the time to be able to lure in women. So he would tell them about their jobs, or what jobs he was offering, the pay that they would be getting. He would often take them out as well, maybe for lunch or for dinner, and basically just earn their trust. So when they were at dinner or maybe lunch, he would talk to them about their personal lives, who it is that they were, things that were outside of the job, basically just have that relationship with them, and where it is that they felt that they could trust him. And then maybe the next day he would let them know, "No, I'll escort you to the job." Now in South Africa, it's actually not strange to get off a minibus taxi and walk into a field, because it's something that's very common, knowing that there's a lot of footpaths that are shortcuts leading to either another town or closer to a place where it is that you're going, or maybe even a train station. So they would get off in the middle of a field and walk via the footpath, and when it was that it would be quiet, that's when he would usually attack. So the items that Moses would use is that he would first take out a knife, just to threaten the women, to intimidate them, and then he would torture them for hours and hours, and then he would either take their clothing, and what he would do is that he would tie a stick to it, and he would tighten it and loosen it around their necks. He would also strangle them with handbag straps, and he would basically see how long it is that they'd be able to support themselves. And as you can imagine, women being tied up to a tree branch, after some time you do get tired of like holding up your own body weight, and so in the end they would actually end up strangling themselves. Another thing that he would do to the families of the missing victims is that he would contact them. One of the grandmothers recalls receiving a phone call from Moses, and he said on the line, "It serves you right, you are now walking over the grave of Monica." At this point, a body was found every 2 weeks, then two every week, and then every after 2 days a body would be found in the same spot. In July 1995, at this point, 18 bodies had been found, and this caused major panic within communities. Women weren't really sure. They didn't feel safe anymore, as you can imagine, and the police said that they had no clear suspect at the time of who it was that was committing these murders. And so what Moses would do is he would read up the newspapers a lot, he would watch the news a lot, just to know what it is that they had known about him, or, how far it was that the police were with the investigation. Another thing that he would do was that he would contact the police and tell the police that he knew who it was that had committed all these crimes, and he would give them the name of his brother-in-law. And so unknowingly, the brother-in-law would get arrested, he would get interrogated, and after some time he'd get released, and Moses would be like, "Hey, what are they saying? What are they accusing you of?" And the brother-in-law, would tell him like, "No, they're saying I'm the serial killer, this is what they have on the serial killer, etc." And at this point, that's when Moses knew that they knew knew that he was using, the fake jobs as a tactic to lure in the women. Moses Sithole then decided to come up with a different tactic, and so then he created an NGO which he called Youth Against Human Abuse. And so it was basically an orphanage, and he says the sole purpose for the orphanage was to connect orphans with their families. And so from having so much history, with being in an orphanage, he basically, he thought that this would be the perfect tactic. And so in August 1995, he actually contacted a news reporter, and he said that he was looking for an orphanage where it is that he could place 2 children. And so basically he was also sending out job applications to his orphanage as well. And so then the photographer told him about a orphanage called Kids Haven. And so upon Moses arriving at Kids Haven, he met a woman by the name of Trifinas at the laundry room in Kids Haven. And so he basically told Trifinas about his NGO and how it is that he could offer her a job. Now Trifinas was a single mother. She lived with her siblings as well as her own mother. And so at this point, hearing about this new job and how much it is that it would pay, this was something to her that seemed life-changing. And one of Trifinas' friends actually recalls, being jealous of Trifina that, she would be receiving this new job at this new NGO that paid so well. Now, as per usual, Moses promised to take Trifina to the business, or rather to the orphanage, where it is that she would be working the following day. And thereafter, Trifina's family recalls that she then went missing for a couple of days. They weren't really sure where she was. And so upon the police interviewing the family and trying to find out from the family who it is that she was with or what is that happened, they gave the name Moses Sithole. And now Moses Sithole in South Africa is a very common name, so it would be very hard to find the Moses Sithole. But because he had already been charged before in the past, on the system, it was much easier to find his picture. And so then they presented the picture to the people at the orphanage and to her family to ask if that was the Moses Sithole that they had been looking for, and they gave a positive ID. So at least now the police had more of a face to know what it was that they were working with, or which Moses Sithole they were looking for. Now, unfortunately, a few days later, Trifinas' body was found in a veld, and she had been strangled. On the 2nd of October 1995, Moses called into a newspaper called the Joburg Star, and he told them that his name was Joseph and that he was basically the one that had been, killing all these women, and he was the serial killer. And he would basically also describe his crimes. He said that some women were as strong as men, and they basically gave him a tough time. He says that one of the women was actually even good at karate, and so then they had an agreement that they would fight it out, and if she won, she would save her life, but if she lost, she would be killed. And so as you can imagine, she was killed. She basically lost the fight. And so at this point, police didn't really believe that he was the killer, because believe it or not, in a lot of serial killer cases, a lot of people who are actually not the serial killer call in and say that they're the serial killer. It's a messed up thing, but it happened. So police were not really believing that this is the man that they were looking for. And so then he gave them the location to 2 bodies. The first body, he said they would find under a piece of metal that had basically been there at least for a year, and it was within the decomposition stage. It was in its skeletal remains. And he had said that the second body they would find would be hanging from a tree from the day before. And so at this point, that's exactly what the police had found. And so then they knew that this was the man that they were looking for. Now, then the name of the reporter that he had been speaking to, her name was Tamsin De Beer. And so at this point, he was calling in regularly, and they had more of a relationship, because she knew he would call every day. He would tell her about the crimes. He would tell her about his past and how he was basically, abused in his past by his mother, and he was falsely accused of rape as well in the past. So at this point, they had basically built a relationship. But because she's a reporter, it's her duty, to report such things. And so then the police had said to her that she should get him, to stay on the line long enough for them to be able to trace the call. And so he had told her that he was running out of money or running out of airtime, because he was calling from, those telecom booths. And so the police were able to track down the booth, and they tracked it down to a nearby police station. So he was calling from a telecom booth that was near a police station. Like, I can't with this man. I can't. I just know. Now, Tamsin De Beer, the reporter, recalls that while it was that they were on the call, the line just went dead silent. And so she basically says, she felt so sorry for Moses. She felt sorry for his upbringing. She didn't necessarily understand why he did what he did to women, but she felt sorry for him. And so when the line went cut, she thought, the police had him. They probably hurt him or they shot him. And so she was very, very concerned. She was very concerned. And shortly after, Moses had actually contacted Tamsin back and basically told Tamsin that he was disappointed in her, that she would out him to the police. He thought that they had something very good going, so he doesn't really understand why it was that she would do something like this. And so then the next day, on the 13th of October 1995, Moses Sithole's picture was released in all media. It was released in newspapers. It was released on the TV. And so at this point, for him, it caused much of a panic, and he decided to contact Martha's brother, who is his brother-in-law. And so upon contacting Martha's brother, he told Martha's brother that he would need a gun because, the police were after him, and so he needed to basically protect himself. And Martha's brother agreed. He was like, no, it's okay. Moses can come to the factory where it is that Martha's brother works, and then he'd be able to hand over the gun. Martha's brother then decided to contact the police and to let them know that Moses was on his way to the factory. And so then an operation was actually set up to capture Moses. So an undercover cop decided to dress as a security guard, and he would be standing outside the factory where it is that Martha's brother worked to be able to capture Moses. Now, when Moses arrived at the factory, he could feel, the vibes are off. Something was up. He suspected that something was going on. And so upon him arriving at the factory, he decided to start running. And so then the undercover cop, who was dressed as a security guard, decided to then chase him. At this point, it's a foot chase. And so then Moses, seeing that he wouldn't be able to get away with it for much longer, he decided to take out a knife. Now, some sources say knife. Other sources say an axe. But an axe, I don't think Moses would be on his way to a factory holding an axe. I mean, it's an axe. So we'll go with a knife. And so then he decided to take out the knife, and he basically was ready to just attack the police officer. However, he was then shot in the leg and in the abdomen, and then he was taken to a state hospital where it was that he would be under police watch while it was that he was being treated for his wounds. Now, while Moses was still in the hospital being treated for his wounds, a male officer decided to interrogate him just to ask him a few questions to find out, if they could get more information. And so the police officer asked Moses if they had found all the bodies, and Moses basically just says he doesn't know because he wasn't with the cops, so he wouldn't know whether or not they found all the bodies. So then they decided, knowing Moses' history with females, to then bring in a female police officer. So when the female police officer walked in, she basically questioned him, and he just went off. He became aroused. He started ejaculating and just pleasing himself, at the thought of his crimes while explaining them to this police officer. He was telling her about all the crimes, where it is that he killed them, how it is that it felt to kill the women. No, this gent, no. Moses Sithole was then taken to a prison where it is that he shared a cell with a man named David Schurman. And so David Schurman actually managed to sneak in a camera, and he basically was recording Moses, asking Moses about how it felt to strangle a woman, how long it takes to actually strangle a woman, and how it is that it felt, etc., while all of this was being recorded. And so on the 21st of October 1995, Moses Sithole was charged with 40 counts of rape and 38 counts of murder. And basically the witnesses said that he tried to intimidate them. He would laugh, he would shake his head. And there were actually 140 witnesses that testified. But the woman pulled through. They decided that they were going to get this done one way or another, even though he was trying to intimidate them. DNA evidence, together with the video that David Schurman, the cellmate, was able to take, was more than enough as well to convict Moses Sithole. Now, at the time in South Africa, the death penalty had just been abolished. So then the courts decided to charge Moses Sithole with 2,410 years in prison, just to be sure that he would never see the light of day. Now, Moses Sithole claims that he committed these crimes because of the woman that had mistreated him in his past, the woman who falsely accused him of rape. He hated black women. He couldn't stand black women, and black women were to be punished. And his victims were from the ages of 19 to 45 years old. Moses Sithole was also then diagnosed with HIV and AIDS. Unfortunately, though, his wife and his daughter were not able to receive the same amount of treatment, but he was able to get good treatment because of the state. And that is the case of the ABC killer, also known as Moses Sithole. I hope you enjoyed the case. Don't forget to like, to comment, to subscribe. Let me know what other cases you would like for me to cover. See you next time. Bye. Nope. Look, don't do this again.